Close your eyes for a second. Picture a single building, somewhere on the Mediterranean coast. Inside that building is every book ever written, every play, every poem, every map of the stars, every recipe for medicine, every secret of mathematics that the human race has figured out so far. And now picture all of it on fire. That's the image we all share of the Library of Alexandria. One night, one catastrophe, one man with a torch. The greatest collection of knowledge in human history, gone in a single column of smoke. Here is the uncomfortable truth. That story is wrong. The library didn't burn once. It burned at least twice. Maybe 4 times. And the worst destruction wasn't even the fire. It was something quieter, something slower, something that should terrify anyone who keeps important things in one place. Including you. Let me take you back to where it started. The year is 285 before the Common Era. Alexandria, Egypt. A young pharaoh named Ptolemy I has just inherited the city that Alexander the Great built and then died inside. Ptolemy is rich, ambitious, and quietly insane. He decides he is going to collect every book in the known world. Not most of them, all of them. He builds a complex on the harbor called the Mauseon, the Temple of the Muses. Inside, there are reading rooms, gardens, a dining hall where scholars eat for free, and stacks of shelves rising into the dark. And then he passes a law that should sound completely unhinged. Every single ship that docks in Alexandria has to surrender any book it carries. The harbor police take the scrolls, march them up the hill, and hand them to the scribes. The scribes copy them. Sometimes they give the copies back to the owner. And sometimes, when the original is rare enough, they keep the original and politely send the merchant home with the copy. Within 100 years, the library holds 400,000 scrolls. Maybe 700,000. Nobody really knows. What we do know is that for 300 years, if you wanted to read the smartest thoughts of every human civilization on Earth, there was exactly one place on the planet to do it, and it was here. And then a Roman general showed up. It is the year 48 before the Common Era. Julius Caesar has chased his rival Pompey across the Mediterranean and landed in Alexandria. Things go wrong almost immediately. He gets trapped inside the royal quarter with a small force, surrounded by an Egyptian army that wants him dead, and a fleet in the harbor that wants the same thing. Caesar is many things, but he is not patient. To stop the Egyptian ships from boxing him in, he orders his men to set the docks on fire. The fire does what fires do. It spreads. It jumps from rigging to rigging, from warehouse to warehouse, eating its way up the waterfront. And somewhere in that smoke, books begin to burn, crates of scrolls waiting to be shelved, shipments that had just arrived, catalogs, indexes, copies of plays. This is burn number 1. The one everybody remembers. And here is the twist that almost nobody tells you. The main library probably survived. Most modern scholars now believe Caesar burned warehouses near the docks, not the library itself. The Mauseon was further up the hill. After the dust settled, after Caesar sailed off with Cleopatra, the library reopened. The scholars went back to work. The shelves kept filling. For another 3 centuries, Alexandria stayed the brightest mind in the Mediterranean. So if Caesar didn't kill it, who did? The answer is a Roman emperor most people have never heard of. His name was Aurelian. The year is 272 in the Common Era. By now, Alexandria has been rebellious for decades. And Aurelian is the kind of emperor who does not negotiate. He marches in, crushes the rebellion, and razes the entire royal quarter to the ground. Burns it, knocks down the walls, salts the foundations. And the royal quarter is the neighborhood the library lived in. Burn number 2. This one was not a side effect of a harbor fight. This one was a deliberate, methodical erasure. Most historians now think this was the real death blow to the Great Library. The original Mauseon, the one that started it all, probably never recovered. But Alexandria still had one secret left. There was a second library, a smaller one, sitting inside a temple on the other side of the city. It was called the Serapeum, and it held what scholars believe were about 200,000 scrolls. A daughter library, a backup, a second copy. It survived Caesar's fire. It survived Aurelian's army. It even survived 3 more centuries of empire falling apart around it. And then, in the year 391, Christianity became the official religion of Rome. A bishop named Theophilus took one look at the Serapeum and declared it a pagan temple. A mob arrived, stone by stone. They pulled it down. The statues were smashed, the columns toppled, the scrolls torn up and thrown into fires to keep the workmen warm. One of the last great scholars of Alexandria, a woman named Hypatia, watched the city's intellectual life collapse around her. A few years later, a mob would tear her apart in the street too. Some historians call this the real burning of Alexandria. Not Caesar, not Aurelian, this. But there is one more story. The one that, for centuries, was the only one anyone told. The year is 642. A Muslim general named Amr ibn al-As captures Alexandria. According to a legend, the new caliph orders him to burn the library. Amr supposedly fuels the city's bathhouses with scrolls for 6 months. The fires never run out of paper. The greatest collection of human knowledge becomes hot water for a few thousand bathers. It is a powerful story. It is also almost certainly a lie. The tale doesn't appear in any source until 500 years after it supposedly happened. By the year 642, the library had already been gone for centuries. There was nothing left in Alexandria to burn. The story was invented later, probably for political reasons, and we have been retelling it ever since because it is dramatic and clean. Reality is messier. So what actually destroyed the Library of Alexandria? Not Caesar, not Aurelian, not Theophilus, not Amr. Money, budget cuts, politics, neglect. For 400 years, emperors stopped funding the scholars. The kings stopped buying scrolls. The scribes stopped getting paid. Talented people left for better-funded cities like Constantinople or Antioch. Roofs leaked, shelves emptied, rooms went dark. The library did not die in a single night of flames. It died one budget meeting at a time, over centuries, in a silence that nobody bothered to record. By the time anyone showed up with a torch, there was barely anything left to burn. And this brings us to the part that actually hurts. What did we lose? We don't fully know, but we have clues. Other ancient writers, in books that did survive, quoted from books that only existed in Alexandria. So we have the quotes. We just don't have the books. The playwright Sophocles wrote 123 plays. 7 survived. Aeschylus wrote 97. Euripides wrote 92. 18 survived, and those only because a single damaged manuscript happened to fall into the right hands. The other lost plays were almost certainly in Alexandria. Aristotle wrote a famous book on comedy that everyone in antiquity referenced. We have never found a single copy. The Carthaginian civilization, the great rival of Rome, wrote its own history in its own language. All of it is gone. An Egyptian priest named Manetho compiled the full history of every pharaoh going back 3,000 years. Gone. A Babylonian named Berossus wrote the entire history of Mesopotamia. Gone. And then there is the one that, when you really think about it, almost breaks your heart. His name was Aristarchus of Samos. He worked in Alexandria around 270 before the Common Era. And he figured out, 1800 years before Copernicus, that the Earth orbits the Sun. He worked out the proof. He wrote it down. We know he did, because 2 other ancient authors briefly mention it. We have those 2 sentences. We do not have the proof. The full argument, the mathematics, the diagrams, the work that could have rewritten human science 13 centuries earlier. All of it sat on a single shelf in Alexandria. And now it sits at the bottom of history. Ash and silence. Eratosthenes, another Alexandrian, calculated the circumference of the Earth almost perfectly using sticks and shadows. We know his answer. We do not have the original math. There may have been hundreds of discoveries like this, lost not because the ideas were wrong, lost because nobody made enough copies. That is the real lesson of Alexandria, and it has almost nothing to do with fire. The library did not fail because one emperor was cruel, or one mob got out of control, or one general lost a battle. It failed because every great idea, every priceless map, every secret of medicine and mathematics and astronomy, was sitting in one building, in one city, in one copy, centralized, Convenient. Fragile. When that building fell, the lights went out across the Mediterranean. Europe forgot how to read Greek for nearly 800 years. Mathematicians lost the work of their grandfathers. Doctors forgot anatomy that the Egyptians had figured out a millennium before. Astronomers had to rediscover the orbits of planets from scratch. We call this period the Dark Ages, and one of the reasons it stayed dark for so long is that Alexandria's backup never existed. We didn't fully recover until the Renaissance, and we are still finding pieces of what was lost. In 2006, scientists studied a medieval prayer book that had been written on top of an older, erased text. Underneath the prayers, written in faded ink, was the work of Archimedes, including an entire branch of mathematics, something startlingly close to calculus, that humanity had been doing without for 1900 years. Medieval monks had scraped his genius off the page so they could write their hymns on top. We are still digging that knowledge back out, one ghost at a time. So here is the question. The one that should follow you out of this video and sit in your chest for the rest of the day. What knowledge is sitting in one place right now? One server farm, one data center, one archive in a basement somewhere, one hard drive on one desk, one company you trust with all of your photographs, all of your messages, all of your work, one copy, one torch away from gone. Alexandria didn't think it would happen to them either. They just thought their great library would last forever, the way we think ours will. And then one day, one slow decade at a time, it didn't. The library is always burning. The only question is whether we remembered to make copies.